You are once again welcome to Collins Cinema Treasury of Excellent Knowledge, where the truth is being spoken raw, without regard, without sentiment, without nepotism, without respect, and without consideration. I am your humble servant, Evangelist Collins Cinema, greeting you from my base, the city of Valencia, and most especially greeting you on the behalf of the only Lord and the Messiah of the universe, Jesus the Christ. The topic, as you can see on the board, is the unwilling slaves versus the willing slaves in your life. And from point of reality, the unwilling slaves. This is about the roles the unwilling slaves do play in your life, and also the roles of the willing slaves do play in your life. You might not have realized this, and you might not have concentrated to consider the sort of roles the willing slaves and the unwilling slaves in your life can play, how they can impact your life positively or negatively. And the unwilling slaves I'm talking among the willing slaves in your life, that is, those who are together slaves with you in one way or the other. It might not be political slavery, it might not be religious slavery, but there are diversity of slavery. It may be demonic slavery, it can be slavery of addiction, it can be slavery of all sorts, it can be slavery of street life, intimidation and humiliation. So there are different ways people suffer in slavery, and it is about a group of people under slavery. While in the process, you begin to discover the unwilling slaves among them and the willing slaves among them, and in the process of them trying to regain their freedom. So I have made a video about characteristics of the willing slaves and the characteristics of the unwilling slaves. Then this one is related to the two of the videos, the unwilling slaves versus the willing slaves in your life. It is to present to us the differences, the contradiction of differences between the roles of the willing slaves in your life and the roles of the unwilling slaves in your life. So the willing slaves are those who are willing to continue in slavery, who rejoice being slaves and also find reason to remain under slavery, while the unwilling slaves are those who regret to be slaves. They hate being slavery. They hate being slaves, and they hate their own slavery, and at the same time they find reasons why they should not remain slaves, and the reason why they must regain their freedom. Not only finding reason, they venture to regaining their freedom, that is, carrying other people along, fighting alongside others, either as subordinate freedom fighters or leading freedom fighters, or leading liberator or subordinate liberators. These are the characteristics of the unwilling slaves. While on the contrary, the willing slaves never consider fighting. Even when they are being dragged along in the process of the venture to regaining freedom, you begin to see their characteristics and the role they have to play in your life, which you may never realize, but I am here to bring it to you from points of reality, from Bible truth. That is the book of life, and the Bible truth is the truth of God. So it doesn't matter whomsoever. What matters is it is real. And while I'll be mentioning them you begin to grasp them one by one and to realize that that actually happens. And most of these things I'm about to tell you have been happening in your life, and without you carefully and diligently identifying them. But from this lesson, you can begin to absolutely identify who is who in your life among these two categories of people, whom are the unwilling slaves and the willing slaves, and the kind of impact they have, they play, the kind of impact they make in your life. And this will also help you to know how to relate with each of them. It will also position you very well to know whom you will permit to influence you among these two categories of people, and those you will not permit to influence you with their impact, because their impact will be disastrous to you, and those whose impact will be constructive to your life. So these are the two major sorts of your fellow slaves. Wherever you are suffering as a slave, or whichever way of slavery you are suffering, you have counterparts. You have counterparts. Among those counterparts, if you are a freedom hunter, there are among your counterparts who are also freedom hunters. And there are those who don't care to gain their freedom. And you may not know them until they begin to exhibit their attributes. And that is the reason I have made those videos on characteristics of the unwilling slaves and characteristics of the willing slave, differentiating the two of them. Now, through those their characters, you will begin to see from this lesson the role they play in your life, how the role they play in your life either help you or set you back, or keep you stagnant, or even destroy you, or progress you, depending on who played the role. And at times, out of ignorance, we fail to know who is who, and the unwilling slave take the leading step in our life and in our quest for freedom in different dimensions. May God bless you. That is the introduction. Now, the definition is the role of both of the unwilling slaves and the willing slaves concerning you, especially when you have common interests with them. something. Okay, let us continue. Captivating text for this lesson, Numbers 11, 10 to 17. That is the captivating text for this lesson. Numbers 11, 10 to 17. What does it have to say? Say, now Moses had the people weeping in self-pity throughout their families, every man at the doorway of his tent. And the anger of the Lord blazed hotly, and Moses regarded their behavior as evil. So Moses said to the Lord, why have you been so hard on your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight, that you have placed the burden of all these people on me? Was it I who conceived all these people? Was it I who brought them forth, that you should say to me, carry them in your arms as a nurse carries the nursing infant to the land which you swore to their fathers? Where am I to get meat to give to all these people? For they were before me and say, for they weep before me and say, give us meat, so that we may eat. I am not able to carry all these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. So if this is the way you are going to deal with me, please kill me at once. If I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my wretchedness. So 16. Accordingly, the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 men from among the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and their officers. Bring them to the tent of meeting, tabernacle, and let them stand there with you. Then I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take away some of the Spirit who is upon you, and will put him upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you will not have to bear it all alone. Praise God. So we see the people grumbling against Moses, grumbling against God in the wilderness. And this is after God had used Moses and Aaron to emancipate them from Egypt. On their way, they did not completely lack food. Rather, the only food available for them was the manna which God sent to them from heaven. They were ungrateful to God, and they never appreciated it. And it never occurred to them that they were on transit, and they have a destination where they should reach. And until they reach that destination, things cannot absolutely be comfortable to them. These are the kind of people who want to be comfortable in life at all times. And they have every reason to blame others for them not meeting up their expectation at all times. Even though Moses was their fellow sufferer, even though Moses is not responsible for their slavery, but Moses was responsible for emancipating them. And according to divine mandate, not that he just loved doing so because it is very, very bothersome. Yet these people never considered it. They were so much ungrateful to him. They were so much ungrateful to God. As a reason, they only murmured. They never thanked God at any time throughout their exodus. So these are the unwilling slaves. And here Moses represents the willing slave, the unwilling slave who has a contradicting attitude, who has a contradicting influence on you. These people were weighing Moses down. Why Moses was motivating them to the extent that due to the way they were worrisome to him, he became discouraged to demand that if the situation will continue that way, it is better that God took his life. But because of God's sake and because of God's purpose, and because Moses is not actually the cause of the whole circumstances, God continued to sustain him and continued to provide for him. And rather, God became angry with those unwilling slaves with their attitude and with some sort of influence they have over the people. That is, they discourage the people when they should be motivating to the people. So it is for us to understand from their characters the kind of influence, the kind of impact, the kind of role the willing slaves and the unwilling slaves can play in our life. The role of our Moses and the role of our mixed multitude. They are all along us, everywhere in the family, in our various villages, in our communities, wherever we go. Anywhere we go, there are these two major sets of people, the willing slaves and the unwilling slaves. Those suffering together with you, but they never find any reason to walk along with you to regaining your freedom. Rather, they find reason to blame those who champion their freedom quest. And always find reason why they should have not started it. Always find reason why it will seem impossible to be achieved, but they never make any effort. And in the process, they continue to demoralize others. They continue to influence others who will join them to be complaining. These are the roles of the unwilling slaves in your life. But on the contrary, the sort of Moses, the sort of the tribe of the Levi, the Leviticus, and the rest, some other people, they are motivators. They are motivators, and the motivators are those whom God actually used to bring the slaves to their destination of freedom, of which the Canaan land represents in this study. May God bless you. I welcome your presence, my brother Carlo Johnson, and some other people who may be watching me right now, whose name have not appeared on the screen. Your presence are highly welcome. So the purposes, I have purposes for this lesson. That is, these purposes is where our mind should be channeled to. Where our mind should be channeled to. The key factors, the summary factors of this lesson, the essences of this lesson, what we are to earn, what we are to grasp, and how we should apply our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from this lesson to make it a reality in our life and in our purposes. 5 of them, the purposes. The first one is realizing the impact of both of the unwilling slaves and the willing slaves in your life. 2, differentiating between the impacts of the unwilling slaves and of the willing slaves concerning yourself. 3, guiding you to shun the impact of the unwilling slaves and adopt the impact of the unwilling slaves concerning yourself. 4, realizing the benefits of adopting the impacts of the unwilling slaves and of the repercussions of adopting the impact of the unwilling slaves in your life. 5, helping you to attain real freedom for yourself and others. 5, helping you to attain real freedom for yourself and others. These are the purposes of this lesson. Then going to the main content, and from points of reality, which is main content with Bible affirmation of all, I will mention them one by one before I will begin to reflect once again on them. That is, narrating them little by little, one after the other. Then they are 23. The first one is, the main content of the lesson. The first one is, the unwilling slaves hate your slavery victimization, but the willing slaves love your slavery victimization. I told you these are the contradicting set of people with contradicting influence and impact in your life, and most especially in your quest for freedom. So in your life, then I'm talking specifically on your quest to freedom as a slave of one sort or another. I repeat the first one before I continue. Say, the unwilling slaves hate your slavery victimization, but the willing slaves love your slavery victimization. 2. The unwilling slaves fight for your freedom, but the unwilling slaves promote your slavery. 3. Unwilling slaves motivate you to freeing yourself, but the unwilling slaves demoralize you from freeing yourself. 4. The unwilling slaves hate your enslavers, but the willing slaves love your enslavers. 5. The unwilling slaves confront your enslavers, but the willing slaves blame the unwilling slaves for confronting your enslavers. 6. The unwilling slaves combat your enslavers, but the willing slaves never combat your enslavers. 7. The unwilling slaves make you conservative for freeing you, but the willing slaves make you perverse for sustaining your enslavement victimization. 8. The willing slaves want absolute freedom for you, but the unwilling slaves want absolute freedom for you, but the willing slaves want partial freedom for you. The unwilling slaves are resolute to fighting for your freedom, but the willing slaves are irresolute to fighting for your freedom. 10. The unwilling slaves fight for your absolute freedom, but the unwilling slaves fight against your absolute freedom. 11. The unwilling slaves are formidable to fight for your freedom, but the willing slaves are timid to fighting against your freedom. 12. The unwilling slaves exhibit fortitude to fighting for your freedom, but the willing slaves are discouraged and fight against your freedom. 13. The unwilling slaves support the leading liberator to progress the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves turn against the leading liberators to sabotage the quest for your freedom. 14. The unwilling slaves establish integrity in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves promote compromise to sabotage the quest for your freedom. 15. The unwilling slaves are eager to helping you out of distractions in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves are eager to lure you into distraction in the quest for your freedom. 16. The unwilling slaves are reformers in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves are polluters in the quest for your freedom. 17. The unwilling slaves liberate you from lusts, but the willing slaves entrap you in lust. Lust, L-U-S-T-S. 18. The unwilling slaves make you live in peace with God, but the willing slaves turn you to God's enemy. 19. The unwilling slaves bring favor. The unwilling slaves bring you favor from God, but the willing slaves bring you wrath from God. 20. The unwilling slaves bring you joy in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves bring you sadness in the quest for your freedom. 21. The unwilling slaves intercede to save you in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves jeopardize you in the quest for your freedom. 22. The unwilling slaves lead you to real life, but the willing slaves lead you to death. 23. The unwilling slaves never tread your freedom, but the willing slaves tread your freedom. Then I go back to the first one and begin to give brief analysis to them in the end of the 23rd, which will be the last but not the least. The program will come to an end as usual. The first one, I come back again. The unwilling slaves hate your slavery victimization, but the willing slaves love your slavery victimization. Actually, this is their attribute and this is the impact they create. The impact they create in your life, and most especially in your life of slavery and in your quest to regaining your freedom. The unwilling slaves hate your slavery. First of all, they hate your slavery. They hate you being a slave. They hate you suffering under slavery. Likewise, they hate their own slavery. But the willing slaves love your slavery. They love your slavery victimization. This is their attitude. Then confirming it from points of reality, which is the truth of God's word. From Exodus chapter 2, 9 to 11. Exodus 2, 9 to 11. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child. Okay, let me read from King James. Let it was from Amplified today. Let me begin from King James. Exodus 2, 9 to 11. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it will be to verse 12. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens. And he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. I continue reading verse 13. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. I read to verse 15. Exodus 2, verse 9 to 15. So we see the willing slaves. Willing slaves is represented by this man who blamed Moses, who blamed it on Moses, even though he was quarreling with his fellow Israelites, when it should not be so. And both him and his fellow Israelites were slaves under the Egyptian, and Moses also a glorified slave under the Egyptians. Now Moses, having the nature of an unwilling slave, never loved that slavery. He ventured to go and look how the well-being, about the well-being of his people. Then this was his encounter. The first day it was an Egyptian beating an Israelite. Then he interfered, killing the Egyptian on the behalf of the Israelites. He buried him. Then the second day it was an Israelite against an Israelite. He tried to settle the matter. Then the unwilling slaves began to ask him who made him a leader, a prince, and a judge over there. And in the process, he exposed Moses' act of terminating the Egyptian, and that became exposed to the public to the extent that the news was taken to Pharaoh, from whom Moses fled, because Pharaoh intended to kill him. He ran away. So this is one of the attributes. That Israelite who acted that way loved the slavery. He enjoyed that slavery. And he also enjoyed being under slavery and be fighting against his brother. Even when Moses tried to settle them, he didn't accept it. He also blamed it on Moses, and in the process, revealed Moses' secret act of killing the Egyptian, burying him, and nobody saw him apart from the Israelites around him then, of which this person was one of them who later revealed the secret. Even though the secret was against his own person, against their own people, and in the favor of those who have been enslaving them. He never considered that, because he was satisfied in the way he was. Such a person never considered of being free, and not to talk of thinking how to free others alongside himself. So he loved the slavery which all of them were under. That is the attitude. But Moses, he hated their slavery victimization, which is shown by his actions. Then the other one loved their slavery, and he showed it by their action. And these two set of people have impact to play in your life, because you have these sort of people around you, which you may actually realize or you may not realize. But after this lesson, you begin to check around you, you begin to discover these sort of people. Those who either ignorantly, selfishly, or for whatever reason, keep promoting your predicament, keep promoting your slavery. And those who try to intervene to liberate both them, yourself, and the rest of the people. Or you might have been among those who ignorantly or for one reason promoting slavery upon yourself, upon others. Or you might be on the side of the unwilling slave, those who venture to liberating themselves and others. And you see those suffering even more than you, challenging you. Even when the slave masters and slave mistresses have not challenged you, your own people will begin to challenge you and begin to give you reason why you should not have ventured, and blaming you for making such an attempt. Even when that attempt you have made is not even a unwilling slaves, loving their slavery and influencing others with the same love they have for slavery victimization. I read Exodus chapter 2, verse 9 to 15. Now I will also read Exodus chapter 5, verse 1 to 3. And after Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. Still reading from King James. And Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. And they said, the God of the Hebrew hath met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. I'm going to read the same Exodus 5. I'm going to read it from verse 15 to 21. Let us see what happened later. He said, then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, wherefore dealest thou thus with thy servants? There is no straw given unto thy servants. And they say to us, make bread, and behold, thy servants are eating, but the fault is in thy own people. But he said, you are idle, therefore he said, let us go and do sacrifice to the Lord. Go therefore now and walk, for there shall no straw be given you, yet shall ye deliver the tale of bread. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. After it was said, you shall not diminish aught from your bread of your daily fast. And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, the Lord look upon you and judge, because ye have made our support to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. So you see this the elder statement of the Israelites, because they were suffering under slavery, and their slavery and punishments began to increase. They complained to Pharaoh. And after complaining to Pharaoh, Pharaoh responded harshly to them. While Moses was returning to meet Pharaoh once again, they began to blame it on Moses and Aaron for having initiated the quest to demand for their freedom. These are the unwilling slaves, and Moses and Aaron are the unwilling slaves, while the elder statesmen here are in the categories of the willing slaves. Those who find reason to blame their co-slaves. Moses and Aaron were glorified slaves. They were not exempt from the Israeli slaves in Egypt. Rather, they were glorified slaves, because the difference is that they had divine authority to lead their freedom movement. And also Moses was adopted. He personally enjoyed the Egypt education and enjoyed the palace life, the royal life he enjoyed, but that was incomplete, because he was still a slave, but just a glorified slave. So he took the lead as God had empowered him to liberating their people. You see the willing slaves among them blaming him for having started it, because the Egyptians tormented them more, for them to believe that the reason for the increase of their torment is because Moses and Aaron had demanded their freedom. And they never see any reason to blame their enslavers, but they find every reason to blame and condemn Moses and Aaron, the unwilling slaves, versus the willing slaves in your life. Two, the unwilling slaves fight for your freedom, but the willing slaves promote your slavery. The same Exodus chapter 2, verse 9 to 15, Exodus chapter 5, verse 1 to 3, and verse 15 to 21. Then let me read Exodus 2, 9 to 15. Okay, just write Exodus 2, 9 to 15. Then I will read Exodus 5, verse 1 to 3, and verse 15 to 21. And afterwards, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go." And they said, "The God of the Hebrew hath met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence and with the sword." And the king of now that I read to verse 3, I will go to 15 to 21. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, "Wherefore delayest thou us with thy servant? There is no straw given unto thy servant." And they said to us, "Make brick, and behold, thy servants are beaten, but the fault is in thy own people." But he said, "Ye are idle, ye are idle. Therefore he said, Let us go and do sacrifice to the Lord. Go therefore now and walk, for there shall no straw be given you, yet shall ye deliver the tale of bricks." And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. After it was said, "You shall not diminish aught from your bricks of your daily task." And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way, as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, "The Lord look upon you and judge, because you have made our savour to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us." The unwilling slaves fight for your freedom, but the unwilling slaves promote your slavery. The elder statesmen of the Israelites are the unwilling slaves here, who promote the slavery of the entire Israelites. Just because Pharaoh became more harsh, the Egyptians became more harsh on them. What was the reason? Because Moses and Aaron confronted Pharaoh to demand their freedom. Because Moses and Aaron are the classical examples of the unwilling slaves in your life. Those your co-slaves who hate their own slavery, who hate also your own slavery. They fight for you to liberate you from slavery of any kind which you are into, which they are into. They might not perfectly be free, but they may be glorified slaves. You can be one of them. As I speak, I belong to either part, either to slavery and love the slavery of others. But God forbid that I should be the willing, so that I should be a willing slave. Rather, I am an unwilling slave. I hate my slavery and I hate the slavery of others. And I am the type that venture to liberating myself and to liberating others. What impact do I play in your life? Either to liberate you from any kind of slavery or to promote your slavery. But here we see two categories of people, Aaron and Moses, the unwilling slaves who ventured and demanded the freedom of their people and of their own together, who confronted Pharaoh, taking the courage because God had empowered them. But the unwilling slaves, in the form of the elder statesmen, began to condemn their move to demanding their freedom. They preferred remaining under that slavery with lesser oppression than to endure that tougher oppression to advance in the quest for their freedom and to regain their freedom. Through their attitude, they promote their own slavery. They promote Moses' slavery. They promote the slavery of the rest of the Israelis without them even realizing it. And many people may not think it this way. And that is the reason I am doing what I do, to bring the realities, the revelations from God's word, the truth, what God wants you to understand behind the letters of the Bible. Three, the unwilling slaves motivate you to freeing yourself, but the willing slaves demoralize you from freeing yourself. Moses motivated the Israelites, and he showed it by killing an Egyptian. That is to demonstrate to them that he never loved their slavery, and they too can do likewise. That was the motive behind Moses' action. And it wasn't wise for them to be quarreling among themselves and meet the Israelis under Egyptian slavery. So Moses was a motivator to liberating himself and to encourage others to liberate themselves. He confronted the Pharaoh. Together with Aaron, they confronted Pharaoh. They were motivators. They motivated their fellow Israelis for them to pick courage to liberating themselves because they are unwilling slaves. But the willing slaves, as typified by the Israeli elder statesmen, they demoralized the people. They were blaming it on Moses and Aaron when they should be encouraging the people because they are willing slaves, because they take pleasure in being and remaining slaves. Not only taking pleasure for themselves, they take that pleasure to impart it in the affairs of the rest of the people. I read Exodus chapter 2, 9 to 15. I will read Exodus chapter 5, 1 to 3 and verse 15 to 21. And afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go." And they said, "The God of the Hebrews hath met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword." And the king of Egypt said unto them, wherefore do ye Moses and Aaron, I've jumped to 4. Then I should go to verse 15 to 21. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, wherefore dealest thou thus with thy servant? There is no straw given unto thy servant. And they say unto us, make break, and behold, thy servants are eaten, but the fault is in thy own people. But he said, ye are idle, ye are idle, ye are idle, ye are idle. Therefore he said, let us go and do sacrifice to the Lord. Go therefore now and walk, for there shall no straw be given you. Yet shall ye deliver the tale of bread. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. After it was said, ye shall not diminish aught from your praise of your daily task. And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, the Lord look upon you and judge, because ye have made our support to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servant, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. Confession of the willing slaves. Ever having reasons why they should influence everybody to remain under slavery with them, but never seeing reason, they never see possibility, they never motivate the people to liberating themselves from that slavery. Four, the unwilling slaves hate your enslavers, but the willing slaves love your enslavers. Your enslavers are those who have put you under slavery. Those your slave masters, slave mistresses, they are your enslavers. And the willing slaves in your life love those who have been enslaving you. But the unwilling slaves like Moses and Aaron hate those who have been enslaving you. So these two people have their impact. They have their roles in your life, most especially in your quest for freedom. You might not have known this, but now you know. So it is wise you make the proper decision. You know the category of these two major sets of people in the quest for freedom, to which of the category you belong. And which of the category you belong determine the impact you create in your quest for freedom, and the impact you create in the lives of the others around you, your co-sufferers, your co-slaves in any sort. The unwilling slaves hate your enslavers, but the willing slaves love your enslavers. It is out of that hatred, hating those who have been enslaving them, Moses killed someone in Egypt. Note Exodus 5, verse 1 to 3, and verse 15 to 21. I will read Exodus 2, verse 9 to 15. To show you that he hates those enslaving you. He fought for you, and in the process he killed someone. Exodus 2, 9 to 15. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burden, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man kills the Egyptian, and Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by the well. So you see Moses acts as an unwilling slave. And you see the willing slaves complaining against Moses. And in the process, he revealed Moses' secret act, which placed Moses' life under threat. And Pharaoh intended to avenge by killing Moses. But God just helped him. He escaped and ran away to the land of Midian, where he stayed for 40 years until God called him back after the death of that particular Pharaoh. And during those days, Israel had been engulfed in Egyptian slavery. Then God called him to go and emancipate his fellow Israelites, though he had been a glorified slave. The fifth one, the willing slaves confront your enslavers. The unwilling slaves confront your enslavers, but the willing slaves blame the unwilling slaves for confronting your enslavers. You see that the elder statesmen, they blamed Moses and Aaron for confronting Pharaoh. Here we see a good Hebrew blamed Moses for killing an Egyptian to rescue a fellow Israeli, and also for telling him not to continue fighting against his fellow Israelis. We see him, the willing slaves, blaming the unwilling slaves for confronting those who have been enslaving you. For confronting those who have been enslaving all of us together. But the willing slaves confront. The willing slaves are the confronters. But the unwilling slaves blame them for confronting the enslavers. This is the impact the two of this set of people play in your life and in your quest for freedom. The same text, Exodus 2, 9 to 15, Exodus 5, 1 to verse 3 and verse 15 to 21. But I will read Exodus 2, 9 to 15. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it, and the child grew. And she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burden, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Six, the unwilling slaves combat your enslavers, but the willing slaves never combat your enslavers. Exodus 2 verse 9 to 15. Exodus 1 verse 1, Exodus 5 verse 1 to 3 and verse 15 to 21. I will read Exodus 2 verse 9 to 15. Then the unwilling slaves, the types of Moses, they combat your enslavers, but the willing slaves, the type of those who blame Moses, both the Israeli elder statesmen and the young men who blame Moses, they never combat against those, they never fight those who fight against those who enslave you. But the unwilling slave fight those who enslave you and enslave them also. I said, note Exodus chapter 5 verse 1 to 3 and verse 15 to 21. Then I will read Exodus chapter 2 verse 9 to verse 15. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burden, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. 7. The unwilling slaves make you conservative for freeing you, but the willing slaves make you perverse for sustaining your enslavement victimization. Perverse, P-E-R-V-E-R-S-E. Perverse is the opposite of conservativeness. That is to be principled and self-conscious, to comport yourself in different manners, behaviorally and otherwise. But the willing slave make you to compromise in your quest for freedom, and as a result, they sustain your slavery. I read that verse 7. The unwilling slaves make you conservative for freeing you, but the willing slaves make you perverse for sustaining your slavery. Exodus 5 1 to 3. Exodus 32 verse 20 to 33, and the key verses should be verse 29 to verse 33. Note Exodus chapter 5 verse 1 to 3. Then I will read Exodus 32. I will read Exodus 32. Exodus 32, verse 20 to 33. And he took the calf which they had made and burnt it in the fire and ground it to powder and strawed it upon the and strawed it S-T-R-A-W-E-D and strawed it upon the water and made the children of Israel drink of it. And Moses said unto Aaron, what did these people unto thee, that thou hast brought so great a sin upon them? And Aaron said, let not the anger of my Lord wax hot. Thou knowest the people that they are set on mischief. For they said unto me, make us gods, we shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us all out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And I said unto them, whosoever hath any gold, let them break it off. So they gave it me, then I cast it into the fire and there came out this calf. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, thus says the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses has said, consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, you have sinned a great sin. And now I will go up unto the Lord, peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, oh, these people have sinned a great sin, and I have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, whoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Then the key verses 29 to 23, let me read them. For Moses has said, consecrate yourself today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, you have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord, peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, oh, these people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, whoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. You see, the children of Israel, the willing slaves among them, while they were in the process of regaining their rulership freedom, which should be royal rulership freedom from the king of Egypt and the Egyptian, they have engaged themselves as a result of the desire and the compulsion of the willing slaves among them. They have engulfed into the slavery of idolatry. They became slaves to idol, They descended so low to be bound down to molten images when they should be worshiping the real God. So idolatry is slavery. Idol worship is slavery. An idolater is a slave to demon, a slave to false gods, a slave to little gods. Because we humans are created, we possess dominion over all creatures. So it doesn't make any sense seeing anybody worshiping anything at all, if not the only real God. It doesn't matter who. So no diabolic God, no occultic God should be superior than any human being. But it is as a result of slavish mentality of mankind that mankind descends so low to worshiping false gods, to worshiping demons, whom God has made us to excel above them. We are created superior to demons. We are created superior to Lucifer. But the majority of humanity today have descended to worshiping Lucifer in one way or the other, to their consciousness or to their ignorance. And everyone who does that is a willing slave. And all the people who lure the people into are the leading, the glorified willing slaves. But the unwilling slaves come to make you conservative. As you see Moses trying to regulate things, bringing back their spiritual states and interceding for them, even before God, to the extent he asked God, rather than not to forgive these people, it is better he take his own life. But God said no, he wouldn't take his life. Rather, every individual should pay the consequences for sinning against God. Moses was a conservative, and he led his co-slaves. He led his co-slaves in the principles of conservativeness, while the willing slaves among them are the people who lure them into compromise. The idolatry they practice is the evidence of that compromise. And this is to tell you more of the conflicting impact. Both the willing slaves and the unwilling slaves create in your life, and most especially in your quest for freedom. 8. The unwilling slaves want absolute freedom for you, but the willing slaves want partial freedom for you. Excuse me. The unwilling slaves want absolute freedom for you, but the willing slaves want partial freedom for you. Partial freedom is half freedom, or 1/4 freedom, or 3/4 freedom. Incomplete freedom, but absolute freedom means full freedom, complete freedom for you. These are some of their impacts in your life, in your quest for freedom. Exodus 10:24-26. Exodus 10:24 to 26. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, Thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come there. You see Pharaoh demanding that they should go and leave their flocks and leave some of the people, and some few of them should go and sacrifice to the God and come back. That is partial freedom. But Moses rejected it and demanded absolute freedom. That even their cattle must go with them. Everything that belongs to them must go with them. Then let us see some of the acts of the willing slaves among them, how they want partial freedom for you. Exodus 14, verse 8 to 14. Exodus 14, verse 8 to 14. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pihahirot, before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were so afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, and they said unto Moses, Because there were no grapes in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt us with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Watch verse 12 to 14. Is it not the word that we detained thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it has been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. We will see here the people grumbling, complaining, and they began to confess their preference for incomplete freedom. Even if it has anything to do with freedom, they believe that they should be better to stay in Egypt to continue serving under slavery. That would have been a half or a one-quarter freedom for them than to come and die in the wilderness. Because according to them, they have concluded that there will be no solution apart from death awaiting them as the Egyptians approached and pursued hard on them. They never could tell what God has proposed to do concerning that situation. But Moses, who understands, tell them to relax, not to panic, that God will take control and God will fight for them. And definitely God fought for them. So what I want us to understand here is the confession of the two sort of people, of which Moses here represents the unwilling slaves who demand absolute freedom for you, who want absolute freedom for you. Pharaoh had told him to go with some people and left some people behind and some of their properties, but Moses said no, everybody should go, all of our properties should go, and it should be once and for all. Then finally they left Egypt, and at this time the Egyptians came after them once again. And you see Moses still maintaining his stance that the freedom should continue, the freedom quest should continue, while the other people have begun to blame him, considering they should have continued to serve the Egyptians for slavery, to enjoy that little pleasure. If you then also note the book of Numbers, chapter 11, verse 1 to 6. It is there they consider some kind of little comfort they had. They did eat garlic, onions mixed with pepper soup, and as a result, they preferred remaining in Egypt rather than coming out in the wilderness, not to talk of continuing the journey for absolute freedom. Those grumblers are the unwilling slaves in your life. The unwilling slaves in my life. Those who want to have freedom for themselves and for all of us. Who want us to be liberated in one way and still be caged in different ways. But the unwilling slaves want absolute freedom for you, to liberate you completely from any sort of slavery in which you are in. Then 9 say, the unwilling slaves are resolute to fighting for your freedom, but the unwilling slaves are irresolute to fighting for your freedom. The same text. Exodus 10, 24, Exodus 10, verse 24 to 26. Exodus 14, verse 14, Exodus 14, verse 8 to 14. Numbers 11, verse 1 to 6. I am going to read one of them. I'm going to read, I will read Exodus 14. I'll read Exodus 10. I'll just read Exodus 10, 24 to 26. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be saved. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, Thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. We see Moses being resolute before Pharaoh. Say, take half, and they say no. What God would demand for us to use may be among the half you are asking us to leave behind. We therefore cannot leave it behind. All of them must go with us. And eventually, all of them went together. Then the unwilling slaves fight against your absolute freedom. They are irresolute. Then let us also see their irresoluteness, and that must be confirmed. Okay, now let me read Numbers 11, verse 1 to 6 to see their irresoluteness. Numbers 1 to 6. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the utmost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept. And the children of Israel also wept again, and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, and the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. You see their irresoluteness. Moses is resolute, but they themselves they are irresolute. They have faced the challenge in the wilderness. Even though God had provided them with manna, they were not still satisfied with that. Because they were over selfish, because they were myopic, because they wanted to live comfortably at all times. Because they were satisfied with half freedom. They were irresolute to fighting for your freedom. The same way they are irresolute to fighting for their own freedom, I mean the willing slaves. The same they affect you and affect your freedom with their irresoluteness. But the unwilling slaves, like Moses, are resolute. No matter circumstances, they still continue. They still continue. They don't give up. They stand firm to continue with their freedom quest for themselves and for their fellows. There are the type of Moses near you, and there are the types of these willing slaves who are irresolute around you, and they are in your quest for your freedom in one way or the other. But you might not have realized them and realized the impact they have in your life. But this lesson provides you with such a people and the sort of role they play in your life, and most especially in your quest for your freedom. The unwilling slaves fight for your absolute freedom, but the willing slaves fight against your absolute freedom. This is exactly what they displayed. They fight against your absolute freedom, while the unwilling slaves fight for your absolute freedom. Let me first of all read Numbers. We have just read Numbers 11:1 to 6. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uppermost part of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched, and he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the flesh which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. You see them fighting against your absolute freedom. They began to demand and suggest that they should have remained in Egypt, trying to drag you back from the level of freedom you have attained. They try to drag you back with themselves together. The willing slaves. Knowingly, unknowingly, they fight against their own freedom. In the sense they're fighting against your own freedom. But the unwilling slaves, the types of Moses, they fight for your absolute freedom, while they fight for their own absolute freedom. Let me read once again that Exodus chapter 10. That Exodus chapter 10, verse 24 to 26. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, Thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. The unwilling slaves are formidable to fight for your freedom, but the willing slaves are timid to fighting against your freedom. The unwilling slaves are formidable to fight for your freedom, but the unwilling slaves are timid to fighting against your freedom. Exodus 10, 24 to 26. Numbers 14, 8 to 14. Exodus 10, 24 to 26. Exodus 14, 8 to 14. Numbers 11, 1 to 6. Let me read Exodus 10, 24 to 26. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, Thou must give us also sacrifice and burnt offering, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. You see his formidability. You see Moses with his formidability. Then let us read Exodus 14, 8 to 14, to see the timidity of those willing slaves among them, the mixed multitude and the feeble among them. Exodus 14, 8 to 14. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand, but the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pihahirot, before Baal-Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt us with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. So we see Moses' formidability here displayed. we see their timidity also displayed. And these are the people, they have previously demanded that Moses should let them alone to remain in Egypt, even when God had decided that they should be liberated. And this prophecy fulfilled, and it should be 400 years of slavery between one generation and other among the Israelites. But at that time, their slavery had lasted for 430 years. They could not deliver themselves, to emancipate themselves from that slavery, and to the majority of them, they preferred remaining that way when that was not God's purpose for them, and their destiny could not be fulfilled in Egypt. And that is the reason they must be liberated. Some people celebrate their mediocrity. Most people are mediocre, and they are happy to be mediocre just because they are willing slaves, because they are satisfied to remain in their state of slavery. They are satisfied to remain under slavery than to pay the price of self-emancipation from their slavery and to live an excellent life. At times, if we are not careful, other people influence us with their concepts of mediocrity. If we are not careful, we begin to celebrate our mediocrity. We're being influenced by others. But there are those who will always motivate us, who will always hate their own mediocrity. And because they are related to us one way or the other, they hate our own mediocrity together with their own. And these are the unwilling slaves, the type of Moses, who will tell us it is better we pay the price to reach that Canaan land than for us to remain in Egypt or end halfway in the wilderness. The myopic and the mediocre-minded among them have concluded that all had come to an end inside that wilderness. But Moses told them no. Moses told them no, because Moses is an excellent thinker. He is a visionary. He could see far. He could see their destination. But those people have forgotten. The memory of their destination has just diminished as a result of the threat facing them at a particular moment. The unwilling slaves versus the willing slaves in your life. Moses was formidable to fight for the freedom of his people, but the unwilling slaves among them were timid to fight against their own freedom and against your own freedom. 12. The unwilling slaves exhibit fortitude to fighting for your freedom, but the willing slaves are discouraged and fight against your freedom. This is exactly what happened here. What happened here? The same Exodus 10:24 to 26, Exodus 14:8 to 14, Numbers 11:1 to 6. Let me read only Exodus 14:8 to 14, then jot the rest down. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand, but the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pihahirot, before Bazephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were so afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. And they said unto Moses, because we are no great in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is it Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, stand still. He says, and Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will shew to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. You see Moses exhibiting fortitude. Fortitude, they are to enduring all circumstances, enduring destruction, even enduring, tolerating those around him, those under his leadership. He was so tolerant to the people regarding their reaction and actions and their inactions toward him and toward their quest for freedom. But those people were discouraged, and as a result of their discouraged and in their ignorance, they were fighting against their own freedom and against the freedom of the integrity of the Israelis. Fighting against Moses' own freedom. Even though Moses was championing their quest for freedom, they were fighting against Moses' own freedom. The willing slaves in your life versus the unwilling slaves in your life. The impact, the role they play in your quest for freedom and the integrity of your life. The unwilling slaves support the leading liberators to progress the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves turn against the leading liberators to sabotage the quest for your freedom. Exodus 32:25-30. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, thus says the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp and slay every man his brother and every man his companion and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses had said, consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord, peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. You see, the unwilling slaves are shown by Moses and the Levites. The Levites were among the class of the unwilling slaves who hate the slavery and they never participated in that idolatry, in that slavery of idolatry. Rather, they supported Moses when Moses turned against them. And they joined Moses to exterminate, that is to execute, to kill those idolaters. And in the process, they killed 3,000 people. So they supported the leading liberators, which are Moses and Aaron. But the unwilling slaves But the willing slaves turned against the leading liberators to sabotage the quest for your freedom. When Moses asked, even though they have engaged into idolatry, Moses asked them, who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me. Let them come to him. Only one tribe, the tribe of Levi, came to him. The rest of the people were against Moses for this demand. It was when they began to fall by the sword that a lot of them began to surrender. Before Moses began to intercede and intervene. So while they turned against Moses, they were sabotaging their movement for freedom. Whether they realize it or not. Whether you realize it or not, there are people like that who turn against your leading liberator, or you are a leading liberator. Some people turn against you. Knowingly and unknowingly, they sabotage your quest for freedom. But the unwilling slaves are those who hate that slavery, hating their own slavery and hating the slavery of whatever others among their people. They support the leading liberators to progressing your quest, to progressing the quest for your freedom. The impact, the roles they play in your life, the unwilling slaves versus the willing slaves in your life. 14. The unwilling slaves establish integrity in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves promote compromise to sabotage the quest for your freedom. Exodus 32:25-30. And when Moses saw the people were naked, and when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, thus says the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses has said, consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord, peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. The unwilling slaves establish integrity in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves promote compromise to sabotage the quest for your freedom. And this is exactly what had played out here. You see Moses maintaining integrity, and those who persuaded Aaron to make them molten images, they began to worship. They compromised. They became naked. Even in the front of their enemies, compromises. These things happen in the church. They happen everywhere. There are compromisers. There are willing slaves. Right from inside the church and to the entirety of the world. But Moses is the unwilling slave, example of the unwilling slave. And the Levites who supported him, they established integrity among the people. This is the role they play. This is the impact they create in your life, in your quest for freedom. The unwilling slave creates integrity in your quest for freedom, but the willing slave creates compromise in the quest for your freedom and in all affairs of your life. 15. The unwilling slaves are eager to helping you out of distractions in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves are eager to lure you into distractions in the quest for your freedom. The same Exodus 30, verse 20 to 23. Then I will read verse 25 to 30 as the key verses. Exodus 32, 20 to 33. Then key verses I will read, which should be verse 25 to 30. And Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies. Then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor. And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses has said, Consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, Ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord. Peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. The unwilling slaves are reformers in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves are polluters in the quest for your freedom. And this is exactly what played out here. Moses and the Levites are reformers, but the willing slaves are polluters, polluting them with idolatry, polluting them with prostitution, polluting them with drunkenness, polluting them with fornications, even fornicating among outside Israelis until Moses came back. Drinking among non-Israelis. They are polluters, the unwilling slaves. They pollute the people, they pollute the movement, they corrupt many people, they corrupt members of the movement for freedom. But the unwilling slaves are reformers. No matter the compromise, they keep on reforming, they keep on reforming, they keep on reforming until that freedom is actually achieved. That is to tell you more and more about the roles, about the impacts the unwilling slaves versus the willing slaves create in your life and in your quest for freedom. Exodus 32, 23 to 33, key verses 29 to 33. Let me read that 29 to 33. Say, For Moses hath said, Consecrate yourself today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, Ye have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto the Lord. Peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Oh, these people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Moses and the Levites are reformers. They are the unwilling slaves. Those who were not willing to bow to sin, to bow to idols, to bow to idolatry, neither to encourage others to continue with it. And even when the people have corrupted themselves, they came to reform. They are reformers in your quest for your freedom, in the quest for your freedom. The unwilling slaves, but the willing slaves are polluters. They are the compromisers. They are the people who brought the corruption. They are the people who influence others with corruption and wanted to sustain the corruption. If not that God used Moses to rebuke them, to chastise them, and to reform the fellowship system. The unwilling slaves liberate you from lust. From lust, L-U-S-T-S, lust of different sorts, of which idolatry, fornication, drunkenness are some of the examples, and frivolity in kind of dancing, ungodly dances, some demonic and worldly dances. The unwilling slaves liberate you from lusts, but the willing slaves entrap you in lust. These are the two sides of people. As regarding to what the Israelites had done here in idolatry, and also lust of the appetite. Lust of the appetite, gluttony, that made them to keep complaining in the wilderness, complaining about food, complaining, and they lure the people into lust. Then note Exodus 32, verse 20 to 33. Then also, I will read Numbers 11. I will read Numbers 11, verse 4 to 10. I will read verse 31 to 34. Numbers 11, verse 4 to 10, verse 31 to 34, verse 4 to 10. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, and the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away, there is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, coriander, C-O-R-I-A-N-D-E-R. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of the leon, B-D-E-L-L-I-U-M, the leon. I repeat verse 7. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of the leon. And the people went about and gathered it, and ground it in mills, or beat it in a mortar, and baked it in pans, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. Then Moses had the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. Now I go to verse 31 to verse 34. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on the And he called the name of that place Kibrotatava, because there they buried the people that lost it. You see, the lost for food, lost for drink, lost for enjoyment, lost for worshiping, lost for sex, lost of different sorts, lost for drinking, lost for dancing. This is what the willing slave will lure you into. This is the impact they create in your life and in the life and in the quest for your freedom. The unwilling slaves the unwilling slave liberate you from lust, but the unwilling slaves liberate you from lust, yes, but the willing slaves entrap you in lust. 18. The unwilling slaves make you live in peace with God, but the willing slaves turn you to God's enemies. The willing slaves make you live in peace with God, but the unwilling slaves make you live in peace with God, but the willing slaves turn you to enemies of God. The willing slaves among the Israelites have turned the Israelites enemies of God by engaging into idolatry and carnal pleasures. And we see what happened. A lot of them were killed and the atonement made. And yet God still complained against them. Right, Exodus chapter 2, verse 20 to verse 35. Then I will read Numbers 11, 4 to 10, and verse 31 to 34, where I just read. Numbers 11, 4 to 10, first of all. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, and the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is right away, there is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of the leon. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills, or beat it in a mortar, and baked it in pans, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. Then Moses had the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. Verse 31 to 34. And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, and it were a day's journey on the side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day, and all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad. They spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And when the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chilled, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibrotatava. Kibrotatava is Kibrotatavah. I spell again. Kibrotatava. double H, A double T, double A, V-A-H, because there they buried the people that lost it. The unwilling slaves bring you favor from God, but the willing slaves bring you wrath from God, wrath and judgment from God. The same number 11, verse 4 to 10, and verse 31 to 34. Then let me read verse 31 to 34. He said, "And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quail from the sea, and let them fall by the camp as it were a day's journey on the side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quail. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And when the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chilled, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibrotatava, because there they buried the people that lost it." 20. The unwilling slaves bring you joy in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves bring you sadness in the quest for your freedom. Exodus 32, 25 to 34, and Exodus 33, verse 1 to 6. Then let me read that Exodus 32 from I'll read it from verse 31. Exodus 32 from verse 31. "And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Oh, these people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Therefore now, go, lead the people unto the place of which I have spoken unto thee. Behold, my angel shall go before thee. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them. And the Lord plagued the people because they made the calf which Aaron made. So we see the plague, we see Moses' intercession, we see Moses interceding, but we see the plague coming upon them because of the unwilling slaves who have lured them into this idolatry and carnal pleasures of different sorts. But Moses was eager to interceding for them. It was Moses' intent to bring them happiness. but it was the intent of the lustful ones, the unwilling slaves among them, to bring them this plague, this God's judgment, and without them realizing what they were doing. This is to tell you more and more of the impact of the unwilling slaves and the willing slaves in your life and in your quest for freedom. 21. The unwilling slaves intercede to save you in the quest for your freedom, but the willing slaves jeopardize you in the quest for your freedom. Where I have just read Exodus 32, verse 25 to 34, and Exodus 3, verse 1 to 6. But I will read verse 31 to 35. I will read verse 31 to 35 of Exodus chapter 32. And Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Oh, these people have sinned a great sin. I have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written." And the Lord said unto Moses, "Whosoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Therefore now go, lead the people unto the place of which I have spoken unto thee. Behold, my angel shall go before thee. Nevertheless, in the day when I will visit their sin upon them." And the Lord plagued the people because they met the calf which Aaron made. The unwilling slaves intercede. We see Moses as an unwilling slave interceding for the Israelites. But the willing slaves among them are the people intercede for their freedom. But the willing slaves jeopardize you in your quest for your freedom. So the willing slaves, we are those who jeopardize them. I will see the jeopardy, we will see them here being plagued, then suffering the plagues of God, because they were unwilling slaves and they were influenced by the willing slaves among them. So whosoever that dominates or influences us has an impact to create in our lives, either for construction or for destruction. This is what we must understand, and for us to identify the willing slaves and the unwilling slaves in our life, the impact they create in our life, and for us to make the right choice by issuing the unwilling slaves and by issuing the willing slaves and their destructive impact in our life, while we embrace those unwilling slaves with their constructive impacts in our lives. 22. The unwilling slaves lead you to real life, but the willing slaves lead you to death. The unwilling slaves lead you to real life, but the unwilling slaves lead you to death. Exodus 32, 25 to 28, Numbers 11, 4 to 10, and verse 31 to 34. Exodus 32, 25 to 28. Let me read. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come unto me." And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. And he said unto them, "Thus said the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor." And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses. And there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men 3,000 human beings fell. We are slaughtered. And death, the unwilling slave leading them to death, while Moses and the Levite were leading them to real life. The unwilling slave leading you to death, while the willing slave leading you to death, while the unwilling slave leading you to real life. These are some of the impacts they play in your life and in your quest for freedom. Numbers, let us see another example. Numbers 11, 4 to 10 and 31, verse 31 to 34. I will read verse 31 to 34. Numbers chapter 11, verse 4 to 10 and verse 31 to 34. I will read verse 31 to 34. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quails from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day, and all that night, and all the next day. And they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place Kibroth Hatava, because there they buried the people that lost it. You see them dying. See God striking them with plagues, and they died. The unwilling slaves leading you to death. The willing slaves leading you to death, but the unwilling slaves leading you to real life. 23, which is the last one. The unwilling slaves never trade your freedom, but the willing slaves trade your freedom. The unwilling slaves never trade your freedom, but willing slaves trade your freedom. Luke 22, 47 to 48. Luke 22, 47 to 48. And while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? You see, Judas Iscariot, representing the willing slaves, those who never know the value, who never value their own freedom, not to talk of valuing the freedom of others. Jesus Christ came to liberate humanity from captivity of sin and of Satan and of worldliness. Judas Iscariot was so much selfish. He was so selfish, self-interested. That was his intent. If not that God was in control, the intent was him betraying Jesus Christ, and he did. And betraying Jesus Christ and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, according to Satan's proposition, using his agents in the form of the unbelieving Jews, was to end the freedom mission Jesus Christ, for which Jesus Christ came on earth. That was the reason for them crucifying Jesus. But they never knew that he had even power over death, over the grave, over death. That death was obedient to him and is still obedient to him. So Judas Iscariot, with the Pharisee high priest, made merchandise of the freedom of humanity. But Jesus Christ went ahead to liberating humanity because he has the capacity to do so, and he did. Jesus Christ, in this scenario, is a perfect example of the unwilling slaves. He was treated like a slave, but he never loved his slavery. Finally, he resurrected to liberate himself, and he liberated the rest of humanity. Even those who crucified him, he prayed for them. He said, Father, forgive them, for they never knew what they were doing. Because he had come to grant freedom from sin and from worldliness and from Satanism to all humanity. But when he will come again, he will come to demand accountability about the freedom he has given to us, whether we hold it intact or we have merchandised it in one way or the other, or we have sabotaged it. He will demand accountability from each and every one of us. So that is the truth. And from here we have known the impact of the unwilling slaves and of the willing slaves in our life and in our quest for freedom. From here we can actually know who are the willing slaves and the roles of the willing slaves in our life, and who are the unwilling slaves and their own roles in our life. Then we'll choose rightly the role of the unwilling slaves and the unwilling slaves in our life, for them to help us, God using them to help us out of our very freedom. We work collaboratively with them for us to emancipating ourselves together. May God bless you for listening. As the program has come to an end, I remain your humble servant, Evangelist Collins Inima. I can see few of you, Lord Yokechukwu Biafra. I can cite you, Ebuka, can Justin Godwin. I can cite all of you. May God bless you. Until you hear from me once again, bye.